Are you a locum tenens medical professional and wondering how to set up your tax calendar for 2025? There are a lot of tax deadlines ranging from quarterly estimated tax payments to tax return filing dates. In this video podcast, I'm going to be going over how to set up your 2025 tax calendar so you don't miss a deadline. Welcome to the Locum CPA podcast. My name is Stephen Lee, a CPA that specializes in locum medical professionals. So why is having a tax calendar so important? The importance of staying on top of deadlines from quarterly estimated taxes to tax return filing deadlines is so important because if you miss a deadline, you may be subject to penalties and interest. So in order to avoid penalties and interest, we want to make sure we're setting up our calendar with the proper reminders and to know when these deadlines are. Also, for many of you locum physicians, you are working in multiple locations and many of you are working in multiple states. You need to know the deadlines for each and every state that you're working in, as well as the entity type that you are registered with the IRS. So whether you're an LLC, a PLLC, or an S corporation, the deadlines are different for filing those taxes. So you want to make sure, and I'm going to cover all of that in this podcast, so you want to stick around. So let's first go over key date to remember in 2025. Remember when I talked about quarterly estimated tax payments. There's 4 deadlines for 2025, and I'm going to go over those right now. For the first quarter, the deadline just passed. It is April 15th, 2025. Even if you did not make a payment, I would recommend that you submit a payment shortly or quickly, even if you missed that April 15th deadline that just passed about 2 weeks ago. So you want to submit that. And remember, the first quarter covers your income that you earn from January through March of 2025. So the first 3 months, you're going to be submitting a payment. Second quarter for 2025, the due date is June 15th, 2025, and that only covers 2 months. That's the months of April and May. The third quarter is September 15th, 2025. That is the due date for quarterly estimated tax payments. And that's going to cover June, July, and August, the summer months, the 3 months. That's quarter 3. And fourth quarter, the deadline to submit quarterly estimated tax payments is January 15th, 2026, which is the following calendar year. And that's going to cover income earned from September, October, November, and December. So it's covering 4 months, of the year. So those are the 4 deadlines: April 15th, June 15th, September 15th, as well as January 15th of the following year. So you want to mark these down. Tax return filing deadlines for single member LLCs or PLLCs is going to be different than S corporations. Many of you are first starting off and maybe your income from your locum activities is under $80,000. And if you refer back to some of my older videos in terms of should you be an LLC, an S corp, I go over all of that and why, if your income is under $80,000, it makes sense to be one versus the other. So you definitely want to check that out if you haven't seen that one. But remember, the deadlines for a PLLC or an S corp is going to be different. So for 2025 taxes, right, this is the tax return for the 2025 calendar year, January through December. You're going to be filing in 2026, right? It's about a year from now. For LLCs and PLLCs, the deadline is April 15th, 2026. So remember, if you're a single member LLC or a single member PLLC, and that's many of you who are first starting off, and if your income is under $80,000, then your filing deadline is going to be April 15th, 2026. And that's typically going to be with your personal tax return, and you'll be reporting the income and expenses from your locum activities on the Schedule C if you're a single member LLC or PLLC. For those of you who have elected S Corp status with the IRS, right? Those of you who are reporting as an S corporation, your filing deadline for the tax return for 2025 is going to be March 16th, 2026. March 15th is the normal deadline, but that falls on a Sunday in 2026. So if it goes to the following business day, which is March 16th, which is a Monday, that is the S Corp tax return filing deadline. Remember, both of these are without extensions, right? If you file an extension either on March 15th or March 16th or April 15th, then you get 6 months. So within the next 6 months of that period, you can file your personal return, your single member, your PLLC, or your S Corp return. So make sure knowing your entity setup, whether you're a PLLC or single member LLC or an S corporation, the tax deadlines will be different. So how do we keep track of this practically? So what are some tips that I have? So for quarterly estimated taxes, we want to set up quarterly calendar reminders, okay? Whether it's on your phone, your computer, your paper calendar, or your desktop calendar, or a digital calendar, Google Calendar, whatever it is, you want to set up these reminders, these 4 dates that I had mentioned previously: April 15, June 15, September 15, January 15th. You want to make sure these are in your calendar. But not only is the deadline in your calendar, but 2 weeks before that deadline, I highly recommend that you put in another reminder saying, hey, you need to start getting your income and expenses together for that period to calculate what it is to be paid, right, in 2 weeks on the deadline date. So make sure that you're setting up 2 calendar reminders here, not only the payment due date, but also 2 weeks before to give you a reminder to gather these things together and to also send them to a knowledgeable CPA if you're working on this. And what I'm telling you is always outsource some of these things to a knowledgeable CPA so that you're not doing this yourself. You don't want to self-diagnose, right? You don't want patients coming in, self-diagnosing themselves on WebMD. Same thing for taxes. You want to outsource this to a knowledgeable CPA. For documentation purposes, remember, what I always recommend is to keep track of the income that you earned every month in a spreadsheet of some kind, okay? So the 1099 income that you receive on a monthly basis, you want to track that. Open up a Google Sheet, a Google Doc of some kind, and track that so you know how much income you earn. And then you want to set aside, receipts and other tax documents that will help track the expenses related to that income. Remember, in my previous videos, I do talk about what are the common deductible expenses for you locum physician. So you want to refer back there and make sure you're tracking all your deductible expenses as a locums physician. And you want to offset the income that you earned in that quarter. So the net amount, we call that net income, you want to apply the tax rate so that you know how much to pay. Also, something that helps is using accounting software, right? Something like Xero or QuickBooks, whatever it is, to track your income and expenses from your locum activities. Also, you want to make sure you're organized. You have a separate business account, a separate business credit card, so it's all in one place. So you're not fumbling around in your personal expenses or your personal bank account to find those amounts. So you want to make sure you're staying organized. Remember, also, if you're working in multiple states, many of you are, make sure that you are tracking the income per state, right? Sometimes locum agencies will send you a lump sum for multiple states that you might be working in. Make sure you're allocating and you're knowing how much time you're spending and what portion of your monthly 1099 income is related to this state versus this state. Okay, so you have to separate those two on your own or use a knowledgeable CPA. So to recap this all, tax calendar for you locum physicians is so important. Set that up now, not only tax payment deadline, but also 2 weeks before to give you a reminder to get all your income and expenses together so that you can submit on time. Also, really working with a knowledgeable CPA is something that is vital. So you want to reach out, talk to someone in your same specialty or field. Who are they working with? And if you would like to book an appointment with me, I'll leave a link down below to book a meeting with me to see if this will be a right fit. And lastly, it's never too early to start preparing for 2025 or 2026 tax season. So you want to be organized and ready and paying these quarterly taxes so that you're never surprised come tax time next year. Let's make 2025 the most organized year for each and every one of you. Thank you for listening and getting this far into the podcast. Leave a comment or a question or a topic idea for the future. Until next time, I wish you all a wonderful day. Bye.